This is Mark, Aquarian Christianity. It is the afternoon of November 2021, 10th of November, a Wednesday. When I was poor, I lived in a basement, in a room in a basement. And some people from my church, after I stopped going to church, about the time I stopped going to church, came to my window in my basement. There was a window up above, and sang Christmas carols to me because I think they thought I was destitute. Not a one of them gave me a dime. Not a one of them gave me a dime. Somebody let me borrow money. One of the elders of the church gave me some money. Let me borrow some money for to buy a shirt so I could work at a grocery store because they made us wear dress shirts. So I bought a short sleeve dress shirt, and later on from Goodwill. So the shirt was probably about $7, and I didn't have the money to buy a dress shirt to go to work at the grocery store. And then later on I bought some shoes that were size 17, which is larger than my foot, and was larger than my foot. But I couldn't find shoes that were big enough to fit me that were my size. So I wore size 17 shoes, and then later on I worked at Pizza Hut because I forget exactly why I worked at Pizza Hut. I think what happened was I worked in a factory when my health was better. I worked at the grocery store when I was in school, so I worked part-time. Then I worked at a factory and I quit that job. Then I worked at Pizza Hut part-time. And I lived in a room that was smaller than this room. It had a general area, and a sofa that was just like covered with sweat or whatever. It was bare floor except for I had a carpet in my room that had all sorts of dirt and garbage in it. The bed went from one wall to the other wall. The bed was under the stairs to the bathroom. The bathrooms were upstairs, and the bed went from one wall to the other wall all the way. There's about a 5 foot area. The room was about 5 foot by 8 foot. So it was about 40 square feet, which I had to live in. I kept my food in there. I ate lentils and rice. I put water. I went upstairs to the bathroom and got water. Then went downstairs. We had a refrigerator, but that refrigerator died, and my food was either eaten or thrown away or both. I put water, and I was sick. I was very sick. I had fibromyalgia, supposedly. Some autoimmune disease, maybe fibromyalgia, that's what the doctor said. And I would eat rice and lentils with a little bit of salt. And I ate that pretty much every day. I think when I worked at Pizza Hut, I would get a free pizza, like a free small pizza, about that size. When I worked there, so I think I would eat that, and then I would eat rice and lentils when I came home with salt in it. And I could afford rice and lentils. And the water was free with the rent, but I got behind in rent. Rent was $100 a month. And I lived in about 40 square feet, and occasionally I'd go out to put the rice and lentils in the microwave. And I'd add some oil too after I cooked it, because if I added oil when I cooked it, it would burn the plastic cup that I used. When I went to college, I probably bought a pizza twice because I thought pizzas were expensive. They were about, back then it was cheaper, but the pizzas were about $3 or $4 and I couldn't afford it. So I got the pizza. I wanted to get. I got frustrated after a while when I was going to college, and I said, "Well," and my mother was poor, supposedly. I thought, well, I can. I should get a pizza. I want to get a pizza. I'm a college student. I want to get a pizza, and I might have bought one or two or three, maybe four pizzas during my college career. Otherwise, I would cook for myself in an apartment, like an apartment type of dorm, or I got cafeteria food. And I was waiting for the bus with my shoes that were size 17, and I had a tennis bag that I had since high school. I was in my late 20s, and I had a tennis bag probably from my mid-teens, so it's a 10-year-old tennis bag. And I put my clothes in there so I could change when I went to work. And I was sitting in front of the grocery store that I worked at before, and I took the bus to, my car broke down. I took the bus to Pizza Hut to work. And I went to the grocery store nearby that to get groceries. Maybe. I never got milk. I couldn't afford milk, and our refrigerator broke, so we couldn't have milk unless it was canned or dried. And as I was sitting waiting for the bus in front of the grocery store, somebody walked by and said, "Get a job, you schmuck." That's not polite, and that's demeaning. The funny thing is, I had a job. I don't have a job now, and I have more money. I have a lot more money than what I had back then. I used to spend about $30 to $35 a month in food. That would mean that I eat about a dollar's worth of food a day. I figured it out. We went out to eat with the church. So for a while, we went out to eat with the church, and we went to Steak and Shake, and I complained how expensive it was. Why couldn't we go to Burger King? But the guy said, "Get a job, you schmuck." And the attitude today is the same as it was when Lazarus was living and the rich man was living. Lazarus had sores, and it was generally considered, God is oppressing Lazarus because of the evil he's done. It's the same way in India. If you are poor in India, it's because it's because you did something wrong. It's karma. If you're poor in India, you're an untouchable. They call them the Dalit class. They call themselves a Dalit class, which means the oppressed or something, or downtrodden. It means the downtrodden class. They call themselves a Dalit class. And they say, look, if you were a good person, you would have money. And it's the same attitude in the United States, same attitude in England, same attitude in Australia, same attitude in Canada. If you did the right thing, like if you went to school, because I've heard it before, Sean Hannity's talked about this, and I'll occasionally listen to conservative radio, and Sean Hannity's talked about this. He said, if you finish school, and I finished school, and if you don't get pregnant, and don't get anybody pregnant, and don't get pregnant, and don't get anybody else pregnant, stay out of trouble with the law, you ought to have a pretty good life in the United States. And I was suffering in pain with what was supposed to be fibromyalgia, and I wonder, why would I be sick when nobody around me was sick? Nobody my age around me was sick. There were people a lot older than me that were healthier than I was. In my church, there were people older than I was. And it was hard for me. It was painful to work at Pizza Hut. It was physically painful. It wasn't too bad. There was a time when it was worse, but it was physically painful for me to work at Pizza Hut. And when I got home, I bought a cane from the same Salvation. Let me see, what, Salvation Army? No, a Goodwill store. I think it was a Goodwill store. I bought a cane for a little bit over $1, and at home I used a cane. I didn't really need a cane that much. I just wanted something to lean on. I could have made it without a cane, but just give me something to lean on. Because my muscles were inflamed, they were hurting. I got about for a time I got about 4 hours of sleep a night, and I would wake up in pain. I think Satan punishes his enemies, and I was his enemy, and God was disciplining me. And discipline is a good thing. When God disciplines you, just accept it. It's hard to do because sometimes it's very painful. So we look at Lazarus in the Old Testament, or in the New Testament. Jesus talked about Lazarus. And he was covered with sores, and the dogs would lick his sores, and it was considered this person did something wrong. This person we don't want to be around. He's got sores, he's poor. And it was considered this person was someone who had done, he just was a wrong person. It was as though he was just like the untouchables in India. Your karma gave you this life. You did something wrong in the previous life, was the attitude. And then a lot of them are supposed to be Christians, and they don't help the poor in India. They don't help the poor over here. They say, well, if you go to school, if you don't get pregnant or get anyone else pregnant, and if you stay out of trouble with the law, you should have a pretty good life in this country. That's the attitude. But if you look at countries in Africa or India itself, can you really say the same thing? And somebody says, well, this is America. Nobody should have problems in this country. But Paul said, to this day we both hunger and thirst, and we are poorly clothed. He said, I say this not to shame you, but as beloved brothers I warn. And the Bible says, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. Will be persecuted. And you remember Job. Job was rich. And what happened when he got poor? They said, look, Job, you did something wrong. You angered God. They started blaming him and saying, you are against God. You don't help the poor. And it was all a lie, but they said it anyway. And God was angry with Job's friends. But you see Lazarus in paradise, or Lazarus in Abraham's bosom. He had his head on his chest. Lazarus had his head on Abraham's chest. And presumably Abraham was in paradise and the rich man was in hell. And that is not the way we think it. That's not the way we think about it. We think, if you're poor, get a job, you schmuck. I had a job. I don't have a job now. People think if you're poor, get a job, you schmuck. You're not an important person if you're poor. You're not an important person if you're poor. That's the attitude. And people will not give to the poor. God sees things differently. Joseph was in jail. Paul was in jail. Timothy, if you read a certain version of the Bible, Timothy was reported as being in jail. Paul in jail, Timothy in jail. Peter in jail, John in jail. We think if somebody's in jail, he must have done something criminal. And while we all sin, not necessarily everybody who is in jail has done something criminal. And there are all these assumptions which come from millennia ago, and we still have them today. But Lazarus was in Abraham's bosom, and the rich man was in hell. And God saw that justice was done. All right, God bless.